Very pleased to have former Congressman Curt Weldon with us here in the Ringside Politics program. And Congressman, how are you, sir? Welcome.
I'm great to be with you, and I applaud your leadership nationwide from the great America's hometown of New Orleans and the great people down there. Thank you for your leadership for the country.
Well, thank you for all you did to help us after Katrina, and for your friendship with so many of our leaders and your work over the years. And it's an honor to have you on the program. And wanted to focus today, and we talked about having a series of these interviews over the next few weeks and months on what really happened after 9/11 when the U.S. forces went into Afghanistan to supposedly root out and take out Osama bin Laden. And you're saying a very different story about where Osama bin Laden really was and what happened between 2001 and 2011 when he was killed. I had Robert O'Neill on the program, Congressman, a few weeks ago. So give us the real story about the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden during those years.
Thank you. My focus on 9/11 was as a firefighter and a fire chief. I was at the Trade Center in '93, the first time it was bombed, and I was up there at 9/11. I lost one of my best friends, Ray Downey. I'm wearing the coat that Ray gave me. He was the chief of all rescue at 9/11. And my run-up to 9/11 was as vice chairman of the Defense Committee. I was funding all of the intelligence and the standing up of the information dominance centers for the services. The Army's program, which we now know was Able Danger, actually identified Muhammad Atta a year before 9/11 as a part of the New York cell. And they tried to transfer the information 3 times to the Justice Department and were denied. That's why the 9/11 Commission, as it was reported by Zelikow, is a cover-up. But more importantly, after 9/11, I couldn't rely on the CIA for accurate intelligence, so I had my own intel team of 20 employees, all patriots and ex-military people that work for DIA, CIA, NSA, FBI, and they would feed me raw data. And a few months after 9/11, they're feeding me raw data that while we're sending troops over to Afghanistan, that bin Laden's been sighted in a town called Laden. I went up and bought a map up the street at the bookstore, and I found Laden, 10 kilometers inside the border with Pakistan in Iran, in an area called Baluchistan. So I went to a classified hearing for the committee, 60 members of Congress sitting around me. I'm the acting chairman, and I asked the CIA. I said, I have information that bin Laden's been sighted in Laden. What's your response? And the response was, well, Mr. Chairman, we've had similar reports. We can either confirm or deny them. 3 months later, my intel guys came to me and said, Mr. Chairman, we have information bin Laden's being treated at a military hospital outside of Tehran. I go back to the intel briefing, a classified briefing with the members. I ask the same question, and I get the same response from the CIA. No denial, no outrage. They said they can't confirm or deny it. Over a period of years, I developed 10 silver bullets. 10 silver bullets, unequivocal, absolute evidence that Osama bin Laden was allowed to roam in Baluchistan in Iran while we sent America's troops to Afghanistan. Meaning those 2,500 troops that died went over there looking for someone that a handful of our scum in our deep state knew exactly where they were. And that's outrageous, and that story's now going to come out.
Well, you have tremendous courage for speaking out, Congressman, because you know you're putting your life in danger by speaking out and telling the truth here. Let me ask you about Afghanistan. How long was he in Afghanistan? Was he in Afghanistan really in the days after 9/11?
I'll tell you what I did, Jeff. I was so concerned about our troops because of what the Afghan tribes had done when Russia had its troops there, that I took 2 members of Congress and one of my intel friends I could trust, and we flew over to Paris because the king of Afghanistan, Zahir Shah, was living in exile with his family in a home outside of Rome. We met with him. I have the photographs, which I can give to you for your show. We met with him for several hours to convince him to go back to Kabul and convene what's called a Loya Jorga of all the tribal leaders to accept the American troops when we came in so as not to harass or kill our troops. I did that not with the CIA. I did it for the men and women serving in our military. And then I found out he's not there. How long he was there, I don't know. All I know was the U.S. was aware and was involved in a deal that was cut not with the Iranian government. It wasn't cut with Soleimani. The deal was cut. I mean, the deal wasn't cut with Ahmadinejad. The deal was cut with Soleimani, and that's why we killed Soleimani 6 years ago. Soleimani was head of the IRG. The deal was cut with Iranian intelligence to place bin Laden in Iran and allow him to roam there. And he wasn't placed out of Iran until Ahmadinejad found out that he was in his country, and that's when they kicked him over to Pakistan. This whole thing is a nightmare, and the people who did this are traitors to our country.
How long was he in Pakistan, Congressman, before he was killed in 2011?
I don't know the answer to that, Jeff. When I talk to people to make sure that I have no one able to counter my comments, everything I say I'll take a polygraph, and everything I say I backed up with hard evidence. In fact, one of the other people that confirmed to me about bin Laden presence in Iran was Democrat Congressman Jack Murtha, the most powerful Democrat in the House. He asked me to help Ron Klink, a Democrat from Pittsburgh, with a source he had who had worked for the CIA in Iran after I was getting raw intelligence that bin Laden was in Iran. So Ron Klink brings this man in from the Midwest. I still have all his contact information. And Ron said, Jack Murtha said you'd help him. I said, I will. I said, sir, tell me your story. He said, well, Congressman, Mr. Chairman, when I worked for the agency, I worked in the area around Iran. And that's where bin Laden is. I said, how do you know that? He said, my sources over there are telling me that right now, and there's a $25 million reward. I need you to help me get to Tehran. I'll leave my credentials there, I'll go down and get him, and I'll bring him back dead or alive. So here was someone coming not from the Republican Party, not from some wacko, but from Jack Murtha, the most powerful Democrat on defense issues, coming in with Ron Klink. They asked me to investigate it. Now I had the #1 falconer in the world, an American citizen from Maine, who came in to see me with the Interior Department. He had trained all the falconers of all the royal families in the Middle East. And he came to me and said to me, Congressman Weldon, I need your help to get into Iran. I said, why do you want to go to Iran? He said, well, I'm accepted over there. I trained all the falconers over there. That's the sport of the royal families. And he said, my falconers are telling me that bin Laden's birds are flying in Iran. If you help me get into Tehran, I'll tag his birds, and I'll take the U.S. to exactly where he is. Now, that man was approached by the FBI at his home, and he was told to stop investigating this information. All of this is going to come out now. That's why Donald Trump needs to convene a presidential task force on 9/11. Yes,
I agree with that completely. So, Congressman, in 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed. Rob O'Neill told me on this program that he led the team to do it. Do you question that at all, Congressman?
You know, I don't question Rob O'Neill. I don't question our veterans. But I'll tell you, the games that our intelligence people play, and this is what's been happening with Donald Trump, but it started back in the 1990s under the Clintons. The games they play and have gotten away with are outrageous. So I would say we have to verify everything. I don't know that, in fact, the person we killed was bin Laden. I don't know that. I'll take the word of those brave heroes that went in.
In your view, is there a chance that he's still alive?
I would hope that's not the case, and I would hope that would never happen. But I'll tell you, when I look at the facts of 9/11 and the fact that America knew that an attack was going to occur and that our intelligence prevented that intelligence information from being transferred to the FBI 3 times, and I have all the names and all the details. Louis Freeh, the FBI director, said publicly after I came out with this information in 2005, Louis Freeh said in a Wall Street Journal editorial and on Good Morning America, if we'd have had that information, we could have stopped 9/11 from occurring. So the ultimate question is, what role did our intelligence play in the run-up to 9/11, and what role did they play in placing bin Laden in Iran after 9/11?
So why all of a sudden, if they knew where bin Laden was, did nothing about it for 10 years, why all of a sudden did they authorize the mission to kill him in 2011, Congressman?
That's a good question. I don't know whether they want to give Barack Obama some closure or some big win. I don't know. You know, the problem is our intelligence agencies are masters at spin. The media doesn't do its job. If they did their job, you wouldn't see all these scandals unfolding now, years later. The agencies, and there are good people in the agencies, but there are scumbags in our agencies, driven by power or money, and they know how to spin the stories. They know how to spin information. And that's been the problem for the last 20 years. And they almost got Donald Trump last May. My concern is he's still at risk. Because if they take Trump out, he's the only leader that's been willing to defy and take on the deep state. And he did that by taking away the security clearances of those 51 people that lied about him and lied about Russia.
That is for sure. We only have 30 seconds. What do you make of the team that he has in place right now at DNI, at CIA, at FBI? Do you have faith in them, Congressman?
I have faith in all of them. They're good people. My only concern, and Pete Hicks is a friend of mine, is they don't know what they don't know. They're all relatively new. I was in for 20 years, and I fought the agency. And for the last 10 years, I've continued. I know 30 years of what the deep state did. They removed me from office because I was next in line to chair the Armed Services Committee. They raided my daughter's house and never talked to her 3 weeks before my election. Never talked to her. That's what our deep state has been doing, and that's what we've got to take back in America. Okay. That's only going to happen if we all rally around Donald Trump and his team.
Well, amen to that. Congressman, thank you for your courage. Thank you for joining us. The first of many interviews we're going to have with you, and appreciate your time this morning and what you've shared with us right here on the Ringside Politics program. Congressman Curt Weldon, 20-year veteran in Congress, serving the great state of Pennsylvania.